Hi guys, today I'm going to talk about a book written by Eugene Cernan, The Last Man on the Moon. So this book is 370 pages. I think a lot of people like me didn't know who was Eugene Cernan. Everybody knows about Neil Armstrong, the first man working on the moon. Maybe some of you know about Buzz Aldrin, who was also the second man together with Neil Armstrong working on the moon. I'm sure very few people know about David Scott, Pete Conrad, Mike Collins, Jack Smith, Edgar Mitchell, James Irwin, John Young. Those guys also worked on the moon, but we only remember the first one. So Gene Cernan was the last one. Since 50 years, nobody went back. So in 1972, he was the last one to walk on the moon. Okay, some quick facts about Eugene Cernan. In fact, he was the first man to fly near the moon, to prepare the ground for Neil Armstrong. So he went very near the moon, but he didn't land. He was the second American to walk in space. He was the first human to circle the Earth outside a spacecraft, and he was the last man walking on the moon. He didn't only walk in the moon; he stayed on the moon 3 days, and no man has done that ever since. So, what brought us to the moon? It was not just a pure human exploration. No, it was a competition between Russia and the US. At that time there was the Cold War, and they were competing to become a global power. So the US didn't want to fail and let Russia become the first to be walking on the moon. So there was this very competitive race between Russia and the US, and that's the main reason why we went to the moon. Otherwise, there was no purpose to go to the moon. So the main reason is to show off. The US needed to be the first to walk on the moon. So in fact, the first to reach the moon was Russia. They sent a rocket that exploded on a crater on the surface of the moon. But the US, they sent humans, so they were the first human to walk on the moon. So everybody forgot about the fact that Russia was the first to reach the moon, because there's no human inside the rocket. Russia in 1960, they were also the first to fly to space. They put a dog and 6 rats inside the rocket that flew into space and exploded into space. So in fact, by sending rockets into space, they were showing their military capacity, their military power. Because at the end of the day, a rocket is a nuclear weapon. And if you are able to send a rocket in the space, means your rockets were much more advanced than your enemy. So following the lead of Russia, Russia put the first man in space, Yuri Gagarin. Then the US, few weeks later, they put Alan Shepard. He was the second human to go to space and the first American. Then in 1965, Alexei Leonov was the first man to walk into space. And then the US had to make sure that they also realized this milestone. So they put Ed White to walk in space and walk a longer time than their Russian enemy. And then Russia was the first to put a space shuttle surrounding the moon, but without any man. It was like an unmanned mission. So this pressure was constant. Russia was always first, and then the US was catching back. And this constant pressure drove innovations in order to send a man to the moon. So the pressure between Russia and the US was the main reason. The second pressure was coming from JFK, the US president, who put a timeline. He said the deadline, we must put a man in the moon before the end of the decade. And this deadline put a lot of pressure on the Americans, and they were able to reach almost at the end of 1969, in July 1969, almost at the end of the decade, they put the man on the moon. So they respected the target that was given by JFK.
We choose to go to the moon. We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
So in 1969, Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin walked on the moon. But before that, as I mentioned, Eugene Cernan was preparing the ground for them to walk on the moon. So he flew very near the surface of the moon with the lunar model to test in order to land for the next mission, in order to land on the moon. And he almost lost his life. He was very near the surface. He lost control, and his lunar model was going to crash on the surface of the moon. So imagine that you die in another planet, you die in space. It was very scary, the scare of his life. So the main issue when you go and make such a great achievement walking on the moon is, once you come back to Earth, what do you do next? He had struggled a long time to find a new direction in life, because obviously there is nothing greater than this achievement. And one day when he was with his granddaughter, he told her the story. You see the moon there? I spent 3 days, I slept on the moon, I walked on the moon, I explored the moon, and this was an inspiring moment for him that gave him a new direction. He said, I have to become the voice to rekindle the spirit of exploration for humans. And he wanted humanity to go back to the moon and go back to space and explore other planets. Next will be Mars. So he was a very strong advocate to rekindle the spirit of space exploration, which was lost for so many decades. And he said our place is among the stars in the universe. Some key quotes. Out here, where there are no horizon, no up or down, we not only didn't know the answers, we didn't even know the questions. The Earth moved majestically through space with a purpose I could not fathom, spinning on a mysterious axis, and I would spend many hours contemplating the why of it all, only to find more questions than answers. On the surface of the moon, instant silence reigned. No vibration, no noise. I was totally enveloped by such a thorough and complete stillness that I have difficulty even comprehending it today. Sometimes it seems that Apollo came before its time. President Kennedy reached far into the 21st century, grabbed a decade of time and slipped it neatly into the 60s and 70s. I will give this book the grade of B+. Thank you guys, and I'll see you on my next video.